want to make a few comments on the Donald Trump presidency and the lessons that we can learn from what is happening now in America. So I'm calling this the Donald Trump democracy because it is a democracy. He was voted into power. There can be arguments against that. She actually got more votes, but because of the electoral system in America, Donald Trump got something called the college vote. I'm not sure exactly what it is. So, first of all, we need to accept that Donald Trump was actually elected into office. He's not your everyday politician. In fact, his background is business. He's a successful business person, although again that is debatable because it's not exactly known how much he is worth and it is not disclosed. And apparently he pays very little to no tax. But according to some people, it's actually all under board. He has not done anything illegal, but obviously from a moral perspective and as leader of the free world, maybe he should be paying tax. Or maybe he's teaching people that you don't really need to pay tax if you're making a lot of money. It's always the people that make the least that pay the most, it seems. Okay, so he's been very busy. His first week has been busy signing executive orders. Okay, I think he signed about 9 so far. Okay, is it 7 or 9? And he looks set to sign some more. Now, all he's doing with these executive orders is implementing his election promises, okay, such as the promise to build a wall, banning Muslims from entering the United States, etc. But he's only implementing the promises that he made. A lot of people, including myself, when he was on the campaign trail, we thought he's surely not going to implement some of the things he's saying. He's just doing it to get some votes. Then afterwards, he's just going to find a way not to do some of these ridiculous things, so we thought. But he's actually implementing those promises. Okay? And if you look at the Brexit, in which British people voted to leave the European Union, Mr. Donald Trump I think his election is, I can liken it to the Brexit. Okay, we're seeing a new form of nationalism which is sweeping across Europe. The EU itself was formed on the principle of trying to bring these nations together, these European nations, because there was a lot of fighting before that. And Europe had been ravaged by war, including obviously Germany with Adolf Hitler, in which there was a lot of destruction of infrastructure after Second World War, loss of lives and all that. And there was enmity between Britain and France, for example. We can still see it today in football and rugby. There's still that rivalry which still exists. Okay, so this new form of nationalism is sweeping across Europe, and it looks like it has crossed over the pond to America, in which the Americans have shown anti-globalization, and so is the Brexit. So both the Trump and the Brexit is showing a new form of nationalism. It's showing an anti-globalization attitude. It's showing an anti-establishment. Okay, it's defying everything that we've known to be under the establishment. It's a shock to political correctness. Most of these people have been talking about, or they've been practicing political correctness, and we've had an Obama administration in which is clearly an intellectual president, and his talk was always polished. But you look at Donald Trump and he doesn't really care how he says the things that he's saying. He's almost it's as though he's talking to not so intellectual electorate, okay, which is, I mean, the demographic shows that he was actually voted into power by the not so intellectual population. So there's also a rejection of immigration. But I've got a point to make on immigration, because if you look at the causes of immigration, part of the reason why there is immigration is because of the failure, the failure of first world countries to really work with developing countries so that there is improvement of standards, there is equitable distribution of capital and of income. Those countries have remained poor, and because they are also under constant bombings and attacks and wars and all that, some of these are obviously caused by the United States and its allies. They then begin to cross over and come to the Americas or to Europe. But the populations of the Americas and the Europe, they feel that immigrants are taking jobs away from them. So there's a rejection of immigration. It is a shock to political correctness. It is anti-establishment. It is anti-globalization. And this is what we are saying. So with all of this taking place, what can we as Africans, what can we learn from this? Okay, so for me, the biggest lesson for Africa is that democracy is a continuous process. I've had arguments with people on social media, and they seem to suggest that we should just leave Donald Trump alone because he's won the election. But the events in the last few days have shown that it is not about the actual election day or the actual win. Okay, so Americans and Europeans have shown that you vote every day. I mean, you watch what the president is doing or the prime minister. You might like the prime minister today for some reason, but tomorrow you might disagree with them for another reason. So democracy is a continuous process. It is not just for the election day. After the president has been in power for 24 hours, we begin to assess everything that he's doing. This is what we should be doing. Okay. You can see with the protests, even though people lost, okay, they still hold that president or that candidate or that prime minister accountable on a daily basis. So it's a continuous process, and we vote every day. We need to remember that. Okay. We also need to hold them accountable every day. So it doesn't matter how long they've been in power. I think in the case of Zimbabwe, for example, people only started questioning the government maybe 15, 20 years down the line after they first got into power. So from the 1980s, with the Willowvale scandal, there was a lot going on. There was a lot of corruption, but the government was really not being questioned by anyone. Journalists were not asking questions. Obviously, we know that the Willowvale scandal was something that was exposed by journalists at the Chronicle. But if you look at on the economic side, for example, not a lot of questions were being asked when the war veterans were paid those huge amounts at that time. I think it was $50,000, which really caused the economy to nosedive into some kind of a recession. So we vote every day. We hold them accountable every day. Checks and balances every day. Okay, that's all I wanted to say today regarding the Trump presidency and the kind of democracy that we're seeing. We may not agree with it, okay, but it is still a democracy, and it corrects itself. With these protests, we know that it is self-correcting. So as long as people are allowed to express themselves and to protest and to sign petitions, then we have democracy taking place. So thank you for watching. If you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button down below, and if you want to comment, if you want to engage, I'm happy to answer any questions in the comments, or to take on board any comments which something which I may not have thought about in this particular video. So thank you.